morning and welcome. This is the second Sunday that we've been together for Sunday service in about 2 months. And it feels so very good to be back with our spiritual family in person. And for those who are still sheltering at home, we certainly do understand, and we always enfold you in all of our love and prayers. And we'll be looking forward to seeing you when you're back with us again. I am Elsie Huebner, the spiritual leader here. Today, Charlene Hale is our prayer chaplain and daily word reader. Charlene will be available after service in the fellowship room if anyone would like to have personal prayer support. So if you would, just go in the fellowship room and she will meet you there. Marge Gibbons and Bob Groves are providing our music today. And you know, we're all going to be looking forward to the time where we can go back to having our wonderful fellowship hour after church and all the wonderful food. And we know that'll come, and we just look forward to that and bless the day that is in our future, hopefully not too far in the future. It's my great pleasure today to introduce our guest speaker. She's one of my favorites, and I know she's one of yours as well. Linda Carney lives in St. Petersburg. She is a member of First Unity Church there. She's been a licensed Unity teacher for many, many years, and also a licensed mental health counselor for 30 years. I read on Linda's website that she believes in using solution-focused, relatively short-term therapy where possible, with the goal of empowering clients to make positive long-term changes. So I am really looking forward to the guidance and the support that she's going to bring us today as we continue to maneuver during difficult times. I hope that everyone read the guideline sheets that you found on your chairs today. As we proceed through the month of June, there may be changes as we go along, but there will be one on your chair. So if you haven't read it, please do. And each week we'll also put a prayer request form on the chair so that you can fill it out during the service and then drop it in the prayer box when you leave to go home. The prayer box is in the lobby on the table. And if you came with nothing to write with today, just raise your hand and we will bring you something to write with. Our order of service this morning is a bit different, but I'll lead you through it as we go along. Stuart is videoing the Sunday services in June for posting online later today or tomorrow. And Stuart, again, I know all of us want to say thank you for all the dedication and work you have given and continue to give to this project. And thank you again to every one of you for your continuous support, both your prayers, your inspirations, your dedications, and for your love offerings. Thank you, and God bless you.
Good morning, and the daily word for today, Sunday, June 14th, 2020, is divine order. Divine order is always unfolding in my life and the world. As spring ripens into summer each year, new leaves transform bare trees into canopies of green. Tiny seedlings grow into sturdy plants and decorate the landscape with an array of colorful blossoms. I marvel at the divine order demonstrated as the earth renews itself. I recognize that, even as the earth appeared barren in wintertime, new life was preparing to spring forth. I noticed this pattern in my life. I may be demonstrating visible growth in my life, or, like the earth in winter, it may seem that my life is stagnant and barren. I remember that as the seasons change and nature changes, so do the seasons of my life. Even when it is not apparent to me, I know that divine order is always unfolding in my life and in the world. This is from Scripture, Mark, verse 28. The earth produces of itself first the stalk, then the head, then the full grain in the head. Thank you. And today we'd like to say the daily prayer. Hold your prayer requests in your hands. You may speak quietly or aloud, anyone that you want to hold in prayer and in thought. Dear Lord, Father, Mother of all, we come to you at this time knowing that you are in charge. Divine order is being done. No matter what the outcome looks like right now, we know that it is you that is doing your will for us. We need the benefits of your love, your light, your joy, your happiness, your cooperation. And these gifts will be in our hearts, and they will then spill out into the world. Your love will be shown amongst all people, and they will rally together and unite in peace. For I know this is your will, Lord, for all of us. Peace, be still. In Jesus' name, thank you, thank you. Amen and amen.
Now is our time of meditation, so I invite you to be still and to close your eyes if you haven't already, and taking a deep breath and just breathing in the wonderful energy of this beautiful place, this wonderful Unity Community Center, Unity Community Church, that we have been drawn back to again. And so we are open and receptive to that wonderful order, that beautiful divine order that we just heard about from our daily word message. That God is in charge, and that there is an order to the universe. And you and I are part of that. And you and I have been in the midst of what we could call a sacred time out, a time of more quiet, a time where routines have changed. The things we counted on have not always been there, the things we were used to doing. And so now we center ourselves, we bring ourselves back to that center. Instead of looking at what's not out there or what used to be there, bringing our attention back and focusing on your breath, that wonderful sacred breath that breathes us. You are being breathed. I am being breathed. We don't control it consciously, it just happens. We breathe. And that wonderful life force moves in and through our body, adjusting, normalizing, stabilizing everything in our wonderful body temple that we live in. And so that wonderful spirit drew you, drew me here this morning. That wonderful spirit said that this is the place for you to be. This is where you belong. And so we were drawn here this morning by divine appointment, as all of our life really is a divine appointment. And we are drawn here this morning to tune in, to listen to that, not to just the words we hear, but to the Spirit that speaks to us through what we hear, that tells us what we are to do, where we are to go, what we are to think or not think. And so with each breath, we are more open and receptive than we have been before. We listen more closely. We acknowledge that wonderful Spirit of truth that is guiding us at all times. And we allow it to move through our lives and the lives of those we love, knowing that there is a powerful divine order at work. A sacred timeliness, a perfect timing that is working. And so in that wonderful awareness of the presence of Spirit, the presence of God that fills this place, that connects all of us to each other, whether we can touch and sit close together or not, we are connected. And so in that awareness of that wonderful presence, we prepare to listen to the Lord's Prayer. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. It's such a pleasure to be back. When Elsie and I spoke about me coming to visit you and speaking to you this morning, I was so excited. Because, oh, good, finally.
Yeah.
And this is such a powerful place. I listened to your message last Sunday, Elsie, and you were talking about just being in this place, and even when no one is here, the wonderful consciousness. And that's because all of us have established that consciousness, all of you, over the years of being here together and sharing your love with each other and sharing the presence that fills this place. I am a licensed Unity teacher affiliated with First Unity Church in St. Petersburg, and we haven't opened yet because the church itself is big. We seat maybe 300 or 400 people all together on Sunday, so it's hard to divide that up, and so we haven't really been able to do that yet. However, last Sunday afternoon, we met in downtown St. Petersburg on Central Avenue at 13th Street to demonstrate for the Black Lives Matter cause. And we were all together. We hadn't seen each other for a couple of months, and we were holding up signs that the church had written about love and justice and take a deep breath, and we were holding them up, and the cars drove by and they were honking at us, and there was that sense of humanity and shared purpose that we all have, whether we are in the same room or not, whether we are wearing a mask or not. Some people were wearing masks, some people weren't. We were outside, so things were a little bit freer. So our daily word lesson this morning, divine order, is very powerful. I'm so glad Charlene could read that to us this morning. And my lesson this morning is entitled A Sacred Time Out. A Sacred Time Out. Someone used that term recently about what we've been experiencing, that this is a sacred time out. And I thought, wow, that fits. That's what's happening. We all know the term time out when we were children, or when you when we had children. We saw children be out of control sometimes. And I used to teach when my children were young. I actually taught preschool, a small preschool class. And the idea would be to get everybody settled. And usually there were one or two kids that just could not settle down, could not calm down. And so there was a point at which we had to have a timeout. And back when I was a child, which was many years ago, I remember the teacher saying, now everyone put your heads down on the desk. And when your head's down on the desk, you can't do a lot because you can't move, you can't see anything. And so that would settle everybody down. And I remember the story of a little boy named Jimmy. He was in probably the 2nd grade. And he was in class, and he was just, he couldn't settle himself down. He would be standing up and he would be touching other kids and grabbing other kids, and he'd run across the room, and pull somebody's pigtail and just, could not settle down. And the teacher said, Jimmy, you just have to sit down. And so he would sit down for a little while and, he'd sort of do what he had to do. And then he would get up and move around and do it again. And finally she said, Jimmy, if you don't sit down, you have to leave the room. And so he sat there and he said, some of you may have heard this story, I'm sitting up on the outside, but I'm standing on the inside. And that's kind of how it's been for some of us, hasn't it, lately? I'll put a mask on, but it's not what I want to do. I'll find something else to do on Sunday because I can't go to church, but that's not what I want to do. In my office as a counselor, I'm now sitting 6 feet away from my client. My clients sit on a couch, I have a sofa, and then I was sitting in a nice easy chair 3 feet across from them. And now I'm back by my desk chair about another 3 feet away, 6 feet away altogether. And we can't shake hands and we can't hug and all of those things that all of us have depended on. And so this is a sacred time out from that. Now it's so interesting when we have a time out of any kind, where we have to be still, where we have to stop doing what we were doing. It forces us to think. It forces us to be still. It forces us to find other things to do. And so one of the things that I was noticing was that, I used to spend my whole day Sunday pretty much going to church. I would go to church, and my husband goes to church on Easter. He's one of those, and Christmas, I guess. Christmas and Easter, CIO, something like that. Anyway, or if there's a special occasion, he will come with me. But on Sunday, he stays home and works with his stamp collection and mows the lawn, things like that. So I was spending all day at church. I would go to church, and then I would meet my friend Jan afterwards at Wing's bookstore, and we'd hang out there for a while, and then we'd maybe go to eat again and have a little snack, and then I'd go grocery shopping. And so by the time I got home, and he was fixing supper, because he does that on Sunday night, and we didn't spend a lot of time together. And that seemed to work okay. And then on Saturday, my next door neighbor, also named Linda, and I would ride downtown on our bicycles to, there's a Saturday morning market in St. Petersburg, and we would ride down there, and then we'd go to Starbucks afterwards, if it was a nice day, and I would get home later. And my husband and I would go out to dinner maybe on Saturday night, but we weren't spending a lot of time together. And then all of a sudden, church was closed. My friends were busy. My husband had to work on Sunday. They changed his schedule. So all of a sudden, I was at home, me and the cat, in the backyard, and even on Easter Sunday, and I thought, what? This has never happened. I called my friend Jan, and she was going to call me back, and she forgot because her family Zoomed her on Easter. Anyway, so forced to settle myself and to center myself, and forced to find other ways to celebrate Easter. And all of us have been required then to slow down. And it's helpful to look at what is this saying for us individually. You know, there's a macrocosm, there's a world change that's happening right now. And then there's what we would call a microcosm, which is what's happening to each of us. Because all of us are part of the world. And we can't disconnect from that, even if we're not touching each other, even if we're not in a group. We are here by divine appointment. That's what we teach in Unity. We teach that there is one presence and one power, and we are part of it. We are in that presence at all times. And so if there's something that seems to be off, we want to do what we can to go back to that center and to recognize that we're not really disconnected, but something is happening that needs to happen. Now, one of the things that's happening in the world on a planetary basis, well, first of all, we know that the virus probably started in China and went to Italy and, has been all over the world and has affected the world. We also know that fewer people are traveling, fewer people are flying, so we can actually see through the smog. You've seen the pictures of the Himalayan mountains where you can see, and there's no more smog covering the beautiful parts of the world that weren't visible to us. The canals in Venice are clear now, and didn't they see dolphins in Venice? I didn't know they had dolphins in Venice, but they have, seeing the sea life, and the world is clearing. It's better. So that sacred time out is affecting our planet, certainly in that way. Also, astrologically, the planets in our solar system are having an effect on what's going on. Now, we are all connected. Again, there is only one presence and one power. So we live on the earth. We are here on the earth because we're supposed to be here now. In fact, somebody said, I was listening to a YouTube video by Christina Lopes, a spiritual teacher, and she said, she was talking about the timeout that we're having, and she said, you chose to be here this time. And I mentioned that to one of my clients, and they said, what? I didn't choose this. I didn't attempt to choose this. But we are all here by divine appointment because this is what we are here to do. Now, in terms of the planets, even the planets in the sky are telling us that something is different. At the end of last year, at the end of 2019, many astrologers said something is happening, something is going to happen in the world, something major. We don't know what it is. Now, when in January, the 1st of this year, some of the major planets went into Capricorn, the sign of Capricorn. Now, if you are a Capricorn, you may know, or you know a Capricorn, you know that Capricorn energy tends to be very organized. It tends to be about getting things done. It's ruled by the planet Saturn. And it was about, in January, we had this energy about things need to be taken care of. Some people were cleaning out their houses, in fact. I cleaned out I had this closet full of old shoes. And my husband said, you really have that many shoes? But over a period of time, and gosh, some of them were broken when I opened them up, I had worn them. But I just felt compelled to clean that out. And, and so those kinds of things were happening. And what happened was that the planet Pluto, now the slower moving planets, Pluto, Uranus, Neptune, the ones that are far away from the Earth, go very slowly compared to us. It takes Pluto about 244 years to go around the sun. Imagine if that was your birthday. You don't have to worry about age. So the planet Pluto has to do with transformation. And Pluto is in what it's called its return, meaning it's sort of going back to the spot where it was 244 years ago. Now, 244 years ago was the time of the American Revolution. Now, the belief in astrology is that when a planet intersects with a certain, another planet or a certain area, that's meaningful. And so if we think about what is happening now in the world, our American Revolution in 1776 was about all men are created equal. Well, we know now that that didn't really apply to all men, certainly didn't apply to all women, and that there were people of color that were not included. And in fact, the founders of our country, many of them were slave owners. So, and of course women, we didn't get the vote till, 1920, 100 years ago. So all of that is coming up now to be looked at. And that's what we mean by the world and the universe coming together in this sacred time out. You notice that we are being forced, probably because we're quieter, we've been home more, we don't have as much going on. And so when we see something on TV that doesn't look right, we notice. And so when we saw a man being wrongfully killed not too long ago, we all know the story of what happened to George Floyd, and his memorial service was on TV recently. That got our attention in a way that it hadn't done before. It hadn't happened before because it just wasn't in front of us in the same way. And so what has happened is that the planet Pluto, it's if the planet Pluto, which has to do with things that are hidden, the underworld, also the planet Neptune is involved. And those planets have to do with things that have been hidden that now are coming up. And Pluto is saying, no more. Can't keep doing this anymore. Time up. Time's out, or time up. Time to make some changes. So that old world that wasn't working well for us is changing and transforming and ultimately going away. Now, we don't mean it's physically going away, but that way of being in the world, that patriarchal system that was not healthy, is being looked at. And people are making changes even now. The planet Uranus is transiting or moving through the sign of Taurus. Now, Uranus is a slow-moving planet, and it has to do with changes. It can be, although it moves slowly, it has to do with sudden changes. And it's moving through Taurus, which is about money, the sign of money or material things. And the last time it did that was at the end of the Great Depression. Now look what's happening economically in our world now. Things have certainly slowed down. Also the planet Neptune, which has to do with things that have been hidden, things that that we haven't been seeing correctly. The planet Neptune is now transiting the sign of Pisces. And the last time it did that, in the way that it's transiting now, was the end of slavery in our country. What was it, 1865? So all of these things are lining up now to get our attention. So there's a macrocosm going on, there's a time of change, but there's also that microcosm of what is happening to each of us and how we are calling to be who we are, perhaps in a different way, perhaps in a more powerful way, being forced to be still, like I was on Easter Sunday, saying, now what do I do? It's Easter, I'm supposed to be at church, we're supposed to be coloring eggs, all of those things, and yet that wasn't available. So what I would like you to do for just a moment is to pause and see what comes to you about your place in all of this. Let's close our eyes for a moment and asking Spirit within you, what am I to do? And just see what comes to you. When we ask that direct question and we're open, it will come. And so allowing your eyes to open and being open to the ideas that come to you throughout today, because they will if we're open. certainly one of the things that we miss the most as, especially as Unity students and people who like to get together and connect, is being able to hug, of course, and being able to touch. No, we don't want to not do that. And it goes against our grain. It doesn't feel right to be able to not touch each other. And certainly touch is important. The human body and being able to connect with each other is very important. However, we want to remember that that's not really where that love comes from. It comes, it's not just touching someone. Have you ever touched someone that maybe you didn't know very well, or someone who you were having some conflict with, and noticing that touch wasn't pleasant? Maybe the handshake maybe the person's hand was cold, or maybe someone that you worked with that you didn't get along with, and they were in the same room with you, but it felt like that connection was not good. You were kind of relieved when they left the room, or maybe relieved when you left that job, if that was the right choice for you. And so, A Course in Miracles says that we think to be with a body is to be with someone. We think about the physical body as being who someone is. And the physical body is where we live, it's where we express, but it's not who we are. And it's not the love and the energy that we give to each other. So just like all of us came in this morning and we couldn't touch, but we felt the love for each other. It was so good to see each other, even though we could only see above the mask. We could see each other's eyes. And yet that was powerful. Many years ago, I was a counselor for hospice. Hospice of the Suncoast Hospice it's called now, or Hospice of the Florida Suncoast it was called then. And we were having a meeting on a Monday morning, and I was on a team. I was on the gold team then, and it was a team of about 20 people, nurses and a chaplain and some social workers. I was a counselor, and there was a medical director, a doctor, and we were talking about the patients and what was going on. And my job was to visit people and to provide support as a counselor. And so we were talking, and then our team leader remembered that there was one of us that was missing that day. And he was a young man named Stephen. And Stephen was a young nurse. He was originally from Colombia in South America, spoke perfect English, also Spanish. And Stephen was in Colombia that day, that morning. I think it was Bogota, the capital, and he was in a courtroom. And the reason he was there was because he had gone all the way to Colombia to go into court to fight for his mother. Now, his mother had been divorced by his father many years before, and the settlement was not equitable, to say the least. His father was very wealthy, and in those countries, laws often do not protect women and children. So his mother, even though she had 3 children by that marriage, didn't receive child support, didn't receive the share that she should have received, or the settlement that would have been fair and equitable. So Stephen was determined to go to court and to stand up for his mother and to speak for her. And so at that moment that we were having this meeting, and it was 9 o'clock on a Monday morning, and our leader said, "Oh, we need to be with Stephen right now. He's in court right now." Because the time was the same, and it was 9 o'clock. And so we all just closed our eyes, kind of like we would do here, and we sent love. We were a nice, group of close people that worked together, so we all cared about each other, and we sent love to Stephen, and we saw him there, standing up and speaking in that courtroom. And I remember closing my eyes and just seeing him doing that, and I knew him well, and just knowing that for him. And so we all did that at the same time. And then after a couple of minutes, we opened our eyes, and then we went back to our regular meeting. A week or two later, Stephen returned to work. He had been, he had about a week or two off from work to make that trip. And he told us what happened. Now, Stephen did not know we were going to pray for him. We were going to send energy to him. He didn't know that. We didn't know it. And he said that particular morning at 9 o'clock, he was in this courtroom, and it was a huge room. It was a very large public building. And there was a judge sitting up high on his bench. And there was his mother on one side, his father on the other side, probably an attorney or two. And no one else really was in the courtroom. And he was afraid. He was nervous. He wanted to say the right thing. He had come so far, and he only had a few minutes to speak. And he said, all of a sudden, he said, I felt like the room was full of people. He said, I felt like there were other people in the room, and it was just this warm feeling, like there were lots of other people in this empty room, and they were cheering for me. Still makes me have those feelings as I think about how powerful that was. And so he felt that warmth, as if we were there hugging him. We weren't hugging him, of course, and we weren't physically there, but he felt our presence. Now, friends, that's what prayer is. That's what connection is. That's what really touching each other is, isn't it? It doesn't require the physical body. When Stephen got back, we all hugged him, and we were all so glad. He hadn't heard the judge's decision yet, but he felt so good that he had been able to do that. If there was ever a proof of prayer for me, that was it. If there was ever a proof of human connection, about how we are all connected, that was it. That's how it happens. There's an organization called the Institute of Heart Math. You've heard of that. And there's a book called The Heart Math Solution. I was listening to a YouTube recently from the person, I guess, who's in charge, but speaking about this. And he was talking about how the Institute for Heart Math does research on the energy of the human heart. Those of you who know about a little bit about this. And they are able to measure that when we send love and positive feelings from our heart, from that center of us, that it goes out and it travels, as we know. And he said they can prove without a doubt that it goes at least 3 feet. Now, when they say 3 feet, they mean, 3 feet this way, 3 feet this way. That's 6 feet, isn't it? And that's how far, coincidentally, that we are supposed to be from people now, just to be careful. And so instead of thinking when we're walking through Publix, as my husband and I do about once a week now, and instead of thinking, oh, that person, we need to stay 6 feet away and make sure we have a mask on, we want to instead think of that, we want to have this open space between us. We want to think of that 6 feet as being a space where we can send love, where we can send healing. Now, part of what happens is that lifts, as a byproduct of this, it lifts our immune system. Now, what do we all want to do now? We want to make sure our immune system is healthy, so that even if we happen to be exposed to someone who has something that we don't want to catch, we're not going to catch it. Just like most of us are immune to measles and certain other conditions, because our body does not do that. And so the more that we do that, the more powerful. Now, he says that we can prove it goes 3 feet in each direction. However, they really think it goes more like 8 feet or 10 feet, and really it goes, there's no limit. And when I heard the story about Stephen, thousands of miles, well, over 1,000 miles away in Bogota, Colombia, feeling our presence, that, I was sure there's no limit. So what I would like you to do now, if you would, is to put your hand on your heart or just kind of over your heart and notice the energy that comes from your heart. Notice in the palm of your hand, if you want to close your eyes, and just feeling that. And if you move your hand back and forth, you can feel that energy. The more that you do this, and the more that you meditate on your heart and focus on it, the more powerful, the more you will feel that power. And then I would like you, when you feel like you're really feeling that, to, if you can, if you have room around you, to spread everybody can't do this, but some of you can spread your arms out. Now, if you can't do that, perhaps on one side you can do that, or just imagining at least that you're doing that. Most of you are, yeah. And spreading your arms out and feeling that energy field around you. And now imagining that you are sending that out to each person in this room. The person to your left, the person to your right, so that it goes around the room from row to row, and each person feels it in their heart. And then that energy is multiplied each time. From each person multiplies it, so that it gets bigger and bigger, so that it goes through all the rows, and this room touches everyone, surrounding and filling this whole room now with that powerful energy. And even if you put your arms down whenever you're ready to do that, just letting them go, still feeling that powerful energy that fills this room. So whenever we wish to pray for someone, whenever we wish to send love, sending that love now, silently from your heart, and thinking of everyone in the world, all of these lights in all of the countries of the world. And sending your love and your light to that space. Sending your love to our leaders, our country, our government, our medical staff, our police officers, everyone. Those who are demonstrating, sending that love around the world and allowing it to come back, because the world is round and it comes back to us. And so each day as we send that forth, each morning, we have the power to do that. And so when you are ready, you'll open your eyes. Friends, I invite you to continue to take part in this sacred time out. Hopefully we're moving toward the end. Hopefully things are starting to open up. We're hearing things about some of the restrictions being lifted. And someday we'll go back to doing things the way they were. Someday we'll be able to go in and hug right away like we want to. And that will be great. But for now, we are here by divine appointment. And so as you move through that sacred time out, continuing to ask Spirit, what is your work to do? And continuing to send love from your heart to everyone that you can. So it is. Thank you.